Hello, everybody. We're back again. This will be episode 4 of Upon Further Review, and today's topic will be the mayor of Minneapolis, Mayor Jacob Frey, and how his response has been so enlightening, such a good, strong, quick, smooth response to the unfortunate murder of George Floyd and everything that's going on up in Minneapolis. And if for those who haven't seen it, I'm actually going to put the link in the description for this. It's worth seeing his press conferences. First and foremost, within less than 24 hours, all 4 police officers involved in this murder were fired. So hats off both to this mayor and to the Minneapolis Police Department for being quick and swift in that action. And now we are all waiting for the district attorney in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to bring charges for these police officers, specifically for the one identified, the man right there in the video kneeling on the neck of a subdued suspect. And the fact that the mayor has gone out on record and publicly calling for these charges, and as limited as the way he can, because obviously he is involved there in the local government, and he's been very careful with his words, but he has not minced the fact that he's calling for charges, and the district attorney has to step forward. Me personally, this is what I want to hear from a politician, any of them, no matter the color or party, and specifically any politician who is claiming to be for a pro-Black agenda, claiming to hold the votes of the African American community. Because I don't know about you, Mike, but for me, the number one issue right now, in my opinion, facing the Black community, and everything we've seen in recent years, is police brutality. I need to know that at a bare bones minimum, if I am arrested or if I'm pulled over or if we are interacting with law enforcement, at a minimum, I need to know that we are going to be treated with a dignity and respect of, I don't know, list all of the recent mass murderers who've all been brought in alive. They've been brought in alive. Some of them have been fed on the way to the precinct. And I need to know that, in this case in Minnesota, allegedly it was forged checks or what have you, something nonviolent, something that in the era of COVID-19, they would not have even booked this man and kept him in jail for. They had just given him a court date for a future date. And the idea that this man is now dead after the police get involved is punishing.
They just caught that killer that I believe he was he's a student at UConn. He had killed a couple people. I believe kidnapped another person. They finally caught him. And of course, when they caught him, he's brought in alive, safe and sound. No incidents, no issues, no need to beat him or rough him up. Once again, showing that police are capable of bringing in someone without bringing any bodily harm to them. But the difference with this gentleman and Floyd was he wasn't Black, right? And it's clear now, it should be clear as day. And I'm thinking that I'm starting to see that more people, especially more white people are starting to kind of open their eyes. It's like, all right, this is getting out of hand. As more videos surface, we're really starting to see that pattern is undeniable. And going back on the officers, I mean, these officers have had some of them, half of the officers involved in the case have multiple complaints filed against them. I'm talking about, I believe it was above the magnitude of 10, right? And you're thinking, how many times do you have to get complaints and civil suits settled against these officers we're talking about in question before something is someone looks into them and say, are these guys competent to do their job? Because obviously they have had issues with abusing their authority and using that authority to harm others you're supposed to be protecting, right? And it's getting to the point now where it's just totally ridiculous. And I do applaud Mayor Frey and him coming out, being very direct about those officers being fired. I applaud him about being very direct of him seeing charges wanting to be filed. I somewhat applaud. I'll give maybe a hat tip the police chief for doing the firing, but I'm also still wanting to see the body cam footage for those officers. Those have yet to be released, and I think at this point where we know that these type of situations and murders are happening, right, where these police officers are murdering citizens, there should be almost at this point, a certain set of protocol. They should know what to do. The fact that they are doing this, I'm happy they are, but they've seen this. They've seen this play out so many times. They almost got what to do by the book. All right, come out, make a statement. Try to appease everybody. So there's no unrest amongst the people, and we'll see what the district attorney says. And on cue, the district attorney is dragging their feet. They haven't filed any charges. They haven't even really announced any details about the investigation so far. They it's almost like they're just trying to duck their head, like an ostrich, push their head in the sand and see if this one will blow over, right? And that's the part that's really frustrating me is the district attorney has not came out and aggressively said that we're going to look into this. We really think that there's there's obviously some issues that happened because he died, and we're going to take this serious, and we're going to, have our department investigate this as a top priority. I mean, how hard is it to come out and say that, right? I feel like, until these, former officers are brought up on charges, I don't think that, anybody can, get somewhat of a sigh of relief if that isn't even a thing in this case. Until that those guys are going to be held accountable for what they did.
And holding accountable is the big key here. And I want to just take a quick point of order. So, right in a video that's gone viral, the officer who is kneeling on the neck made the comment about we've been trying to get him in the car for 10 minutes. And I want to be perfectly clear. Number one, even if he was avoiding his arrest or questioning or what have you, at the time this video starts, this man is pinned with 3 officers holding him down. 2 have his whole body. He's handcuffed. At that point, you got him. Get him up and get him in. And the officer right there in the video continues to kneel on the neck for minutes and minutes and minutes and at any given point in time, he could have stopped. They could have got this guy up, got him in, and got him booked. And they utterly refused. And I think that's where they really go beyond the pale. And the technique that he's using there, that knee on the back of the neck, is not authorized. It is not in the handbook. He came up with that on his own with the express intent to punish this man because they teach how to properly restrain, and that isn't there. And the big thing here is I'm quite refreshed by Mayor Frey, and honestly, I'm not sure if that's pronounced Frey or Fry, so apologies if we've been incorrect with that one. But I'm refreshed with his comments. It has now come out that Amy Klobuchar, who is the district attorney up there in the state of Minnesota, who is now, we know, is being vetted possibly for being a VP running mate for the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden. She had a chance to prosecute this very officer, the man right there, kneeling on the neck of Lloyd and ultimately killing him. She had a chance to prosecute this man for any number. He's been involved in a number of incidents and a number of shootings of unarmed, nonviolent civilians. And that's one of the big keys here. There are people who have openly committed mass murder, people who fired on cops who get brought in, and yet and still, often in nonviolent cases, there's no gun present. In this case, the man's pinned down. We know they have full control of him. We are constantly seeing this kind of brutality and violence exposed. And when that goes beyond the pale, people are going to get angry. And people are going to get angry because they want to see an officer held to account. We want to know that an officer doesn't get to get in his ego, get in his feelings, and kneel on the neck for as long as he sees fit, literally until this man lost consciousness and they had to call for medical. For now we're calling for the medics because the man's clearly gone. He's unconscious and they have no pulse. And that is the big frustration for me. I need my politicians especially those who are looking for a black vote, a black agenda, a support from our community to sound like Mayor Jacob Frey. Because I am sick and tired of the lip service. Amy Klobuchar trying to work her way up possibly into an Oval Office, and even if she doesn't get that, maybe she could be the Attorney General. I need to know because prosecutors make calculated political moves to advance their careers. And I think that's a big problem with politicians in general. They are not out for their current job, they always have their mind ahead for what they're going to do after this. And 9 times out of 10, that involves not getting on the bad side of the local police union when you are a prosecutor. They think to themselves, I got to work with them. I need to keep my conviction rates high. And I need to not piss off the law enforcement community, even when they go beyond the pale. We will come in with kid gloves. We will treat this with the utmost what have you. Because, like I said, if I get into a tussle with somebody and pin them on the ground, they end up dead, there's not going to be conversations. If I walk in and commit a crime and someone ends up dead as a citizen, me, you, Mike, or anybody out there, orange, white, black, or otherwise, the average citizen is going to jail immediately, and then we'll see if you're released. Heck, people get arrested for the heck of it and get charges dropped once the weekend's over. And yet and still, in these high-profile cases, we're seeing these kind of murders, and I'm tired of the lip service. And I bring it back to Joe Biden because, like I say, he's considering Amy Klobuchar. And Amy Klobuchar had a chance to get this officer off the streets. She had a chance to bring justice and ensure this didn't happen. And she didn't. And we see that not just there in Minnesota, but we see that from coast to coast as politicians are refusing to sound like Mayor Frey. They're refusing to come out when there's flagrant and obvious misjustice. We don't need to wait for anything. There will be a trial scheduled down the road. There will be a chance to present a case and a defense. There's no reason to wait for charges, and there's no reason to wait for what inevitably, I guarantee you, this prosecutor is going to come out with a grand jury hearing to determine if they should bring charges. It's insane.
Part of the problem with that is, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of these district attorneys and assistant district attorneys, they don't want to ruffle any feathers with the police. And the police is, all police officers, for the most part, are in a union, and they stick together, including their voting power. And if they ruffle the wrong feathers, you know that they'll lose out on a decent chunk of voting that they would have had. So everybody always seems to walk on eggshells when it comes to holding police accountable, because if there's some kind of political tie or motivation, or there's some kind of arrangement that they have, like, oh, well, look out of the way, wink, wink, nod, nod, if you help me, give me more evidence for this case. And it to me, is totally unacceptable. If Amy Klobuchar, if she wants, to me, if she gets on that debate stage, right, or she gets questioned on it, she's going to have to answer, why do you didn't charge this guy? Why do you allow him to continue to be a police officer without? I think the worst thing he ever got was a letter of reprimand. What is that? That's not even a slap on the wrist, right? Why you have to account for your actions. And to me, you don't have much to say. If it was not for her, this man would still be alive today, if you want to put it that way, because she had the opportunity to bring him up on charges, get him off the street, and we're pretty sure this whole thing would have played out in a different way. We have these police, and the police, they what's coming now. I think what people are starting to see now is that the police often lie, and I say that by saying, in their initial report, they put that Floyd was resisting arrest. Now that these surveillance footage cameras from nearby stores are being released, they're showing that that's directly contradicting the police report. So now we have video evidence of these officers claiming this man was doing something which he clearly was not, right? And if you can't and that brings up a big issue. That's why we want to see the body cam footage. And that's why I believe they're holding it back. Because if that body cam footage, to me, would have showed that they were in the right, that footage would have been out almost immediately. And they would say, see, we did everything right. We did everything by the book. Look. But since they're holding it back, and actually there was another police on the scene, not from the same department, I believe it's from the Parks Department, Park Police there. That department already released their body cam, though they released it heavily redacted. And that's we want to see the complete footage. I don't want to see you moving out piece and chunks. I don't want to see anybody blacked out or things blurred out. I want the complete footage of that entire incident from everybody who was on the scene. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to ask. I think they owe it to the citizens. I think it's the citizens' right to be able to request that and see that type of footage, so they know and they can hold their police officers to a higher accountability standard than what they're receiving at the current moment. So that's it's so frustrating. It's you're seeing a lot of pain, from a lot of people because they just don't get why this continues to happen. Why is this continuing to be allowed? You know, if a police officer is scared of African Americans because of some, bias that they have, whether consciously or subconsciously, that needs to be rooted out and removed from the police force. Because if you have that kind of biases and that kind of stereotypical views of African Americans, that all African Americans are dangerous, and I got to hit him extra harder because he's black, and I got to make sure I keep him down because he's a big scary black guy, and I'm a little white guy, and and you have this type of inferiority complex where you're just thinking that all African Americans are some kind of hyped up, thugs, essentially, as some media outlets will put it. That then you can't be wielding a gun. You can't be going down, being able to arrest people and use a ridiculous amount of force just because you're scared. Because that's all they're saying is showing that you're scared. Had anybody, if I had arrested that guy and he was down, it would be no need for me to put, like, that wouldn't even come across my mind to put my knee on his neck. That's not even something that would even come across my mind as something to do. That to me is almost sadistic. He was making a point, like you said, alluded to earlier in another podcast. He was making a point and holding him down and saying, "Yeah, I got my knee on the back of your neck. Now what?"
Oftentimes, people die for simply questioning and, in their minds, disrespecting the police officer. And I think police in this country, we must make it absolutely clear. Number one, you are a public servant. You serve the public. Every citizen that you see, you better treat them with some goddamn respect. And that needs to be number one. I don't want to hear, in many cases, you go find footage, body cam footage, what have you. Don't move, what have you. Keep it clean. I've seen people, for suspected shoplifting, move and I'll blow your fucking head off is the first thing that comes off an officer's mouth. And it's like, address people as citizens. You do have to obviously hold people accountable in the aspect of this person suspected something, you stop them and you can use your powers. But I want goddamn respect coming out of an officer's mouth when they're addressing people, because at the end of the day, we are all innocent until proven guilty. We have no idea whatever the police got called to the scene, we have no idea whether Lloyd would have ever been found innocent or guilty of that. We'll never know because they killed the man and just trying to apprehend him. And I tell you this, as a black man in America, I've been pulled over, I want to say about 13 times in my life. No more than 15, no less than 12. Somewhere in that area, I've been given 2 tickets, and I've only deserved 2 tickets. Got them and I paid them. But what happens to those other 10 pullovers? They were all absolute profiling nonsense. I've been pulled over by police officers and, license registration, and I've been given the talk. So I go through the whole 9 yards, roll the windows down, engine off, absolutely respectful. And the reality is it's a tap dance that I do. Because after pullover number 9 for no reason, you get tired of it. Everyone has a breaking point. And for me, I've gotten in and out of those interactions, thankfully, without having any big blowups. I've been pulled over and asked them, and at the end, when they're ready to walk off, they never even tell me why they pulled over. And I'll ask, they'll say something like, "Oh, your license plate light is out." And I never forget one time I got out, walked to the back of my car, looked at it, the light is bright as ever, license plate's fully illuminated. Guy winked at me, just got in his car and drove off. He's supposed to wait for me to drive off. And at some point, people have a breaking point. At some point, people have a right to ask questions, to encourage in the projection of their own rights and not be trampled. And people are going to be argumentative with a police officer. They have a right to. Just their mere presence and throwing the badge of the state out there does not grant you king for a day. And when we get the full blown picture of what went down, maybe Lloyd was upset or what have you. The bottom line is what we know beyond a shadow of a doubt is excessive force was used. and the man is now dead as a result of that excessive force. And we need to know that government cannot show up at any moment, and the Supreme Court continuously expands the powers of police officers. Government cannot have their armed, jackbooted thugs show up, pull you over, snatch you out of your car, search you down 8 ways into Sunday. Up in New York, you had stop and frisk. Hey, you, buddy, let me see some ID. What do I do, officer? I'm just minding my bag. Don't give me any lip. Otherwise, we might crack your goddamn skull. That cannot be possible in what we claim to be a free America. And if anybody's out there confused as to why we keep discussing the race of this, it's because this is disproportionately happening to African Americans, Black and brown people, minorities from sea to shining sea. There's white people getting killed by police too, in no-knock raids, in abuse of force, but it's disproportionately happening in these urban areas, in these cities, places like Minneapolis, Minnesota, New York, from sea to shining sea. And we're constantly having an absurd number of police interactions for petty things and having to just bear and grin and take it. Otherwise, knowing that so much as the wrong lip will get you killed. And that's an insane reality to live in Black America.
Some of the stories you tell, reminds me of times, that I've been pulled over and I'm wondering why. One particular time I remember, and that's why I try to tell people who aren't Black, that this is not a new phenomenon. This has been happening for years and decades before I was even born, and I just remember the time I remember I was in high school. Me and a few friends were coming back from some kind of house party. And we say, you know what, let's run to the 7-Eleven to get something to drink real quick because we were thirsty, and then we're going to bring it on home. My friend drives through intersection. The light turns yellow. He makes it through before it was a red light. Not an issue. We pull up into 7-Eleven, and next thing you know, we have 4 county police officers lit us up, surrounded us, and there's also 3 additional state troopers. All lights, they put their floodlights into the vehicle. They're on their PA system, to turn off the car, put your hands in the air. Everybody have their hands on the roof. And we are like, what in the world is going on? And we're proceeded to be detained, stuck in our vehicle for about 30 minutes, maybe even close to 45 an hour. And I'm sitting there with my hands to the ceiling, to the roof of the car, thinking, what in the world they think that we did? And at the end of it all, the guy said, yeah, well, after they went and searched and didn't find anything, and they ran the numbers, they ran plates and IDs, and they couldn't find any warrants. It's like, well, yeah, next time, don't run a yellow light. And I'm thinking, all of this, about seven police cars out here, all of this for a yellow light, right? Only because they saw 4 young black males in the car. I knew it. It's like, you would never, if we were all white, you would have sent us about our day. You probably never even pulled us over, and this type of stuff is, you shouldn't have to, as an African American, when you are pulled over by the police, have a borderline panic attack, start playing scenarios in your head. What do I have to do to make sure that I get out this okay? Do I have to pull up my phone and start recording right now? Should I start recording before you get here? I mean, you're going through all these things and scenarios in your head for no reason. You should not have to do this. You should not be treated different than any other citizen. This has to stop. These police have to be held accountable, and police should be holding police accountable. If you are a cop and you're saying, listen to this, and you're saying, well, that's not me, I never would do that. People on your force that do this. You know them. You know exactly who they are. They don't hide to you guys. You know exactly who they are, and you're just as guilty by being complicit in their abuse of their powers. Just as guilty.
I know we have good cops, and out there they may be a little bit conflicted, but if you truly consider yourself a good cop, I need you to speak up and speak out when people make your profession look bad, because these people make your job harder. These people erode the public trust and confidence in police, not just in Minneapolis, not just in Minnesota. This is a national incident. This erodes from sea to shining sea. I need to hear their voices the loudest to say that what we saw here is unacceptable. This kind of behavior is a disgrace. We will do things by the book and we will respect citizens and we will do our jobs. I need to hear that from any police officer claiming to be a good officer. Because the reality is that what we need for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. If you're one of those good men and or women in the police force, I need to hear from you. And that also goes for our politicians. The mayors, I've said this for years, the mayors control the local police departments. Your county executive control your county officers, et cetera, et cetera. I need them to sound like Mayor Jacob Frey, because hats off for that guy. Like that guy gets the running, I'll be happy and excited for Mayor Jacob Frey based on this issue alone. I don't need tepid responses. I don't need you thinking about your future, because the reality is Amy Klobuchar remaining quiet on these officers in the past has allowed her to push up to this national stage where she is being vetted for possibly being the second most powerful human being on planet Earth and just a heartbeat away from the presidency. I need all prosecutors. I'm a little controversial with that. I don't trust or support those kind of prosecutors, and really most of them, until I hear words that sound like what we heard come out of Mayor Jacob Frey. Because if you're willing to look the other way for that, if you care more about your conviction rate than whether or not you have the right person, then you don't care about truth and you don't care about justice. You just care about furthering your career. We've got to stop clipping and ending those careers. We got to end the careers of politicians, primarily prosecutors, who are supposed to be bringing these charges. If they don't do it, their careers got to end. These judges who sit on these courts and these benches, their careers have to end. We have to start coming for them, paying attention to these cases, and voting these people out of office. No matter, for me personally, no matter what their party is, I don't care. If I see this going on, you're done from me now and moving forward. And I don't care which. Don't pop up later and try to be governor. Don't pop up later and try to be a senator or congresswoman or congressman. Don't try to be the vice president of the United States. And if Joe Biden's smart, he'll stay far away from Amy Klobuchar in the wake of this. And that's all I got to say about that one.
Just in closing, I definitely feel like you said, Amy Klobuchar. I mean, let's face it, Joe Biden. He's he's not the sharpest tool in the shed at this point in his career. And whoever is going to hold that VP spot is going to be a very powerful person in the future administration if he is to win. And having someone like that who would let a killer continue to serve in his capacity the way he served policing in the streets and directly resulted in, we know Floyd's death, but I don't know how many other civil rights issues broken because of this man. She should not be considered for that position. I think people need to voice their opinions and let that be heard, that she especially is canceled for the VP spot. And then I want to encourage everybody that you have to remember all these public servants, including politicians, mayors, like you said, congressmen, council members, they work for us. We are their boss. We are the tax-paying citizens of the United States of America, and they work for us. And it's on us, like any good boss, if your employee is failing, you need to fire them. They need to be gone, right? It's on us, and the way we exercise our power is by voting. So that's just a call to arms. That is our call to arms, is to go and make sure you register to vote. Make sure you find out who's in your election, who's running. I know every time everybody goes to vote, there's a whole slew of people that you're like, who are they and what are they running for, right? Because you have no clue. Do a little bit of research. Find out whether the person that's currently the incumbent is actually doing a good job. Is it the judge throwing everybody in prison left and right without any kind of consideration of, any facts of the case? Is this person's first charge? Are they just going crazy and sending them off to jail? Because we don't need a lot of that. As a district attorney who turns a blind eye to police violence and corruption, we don't want any of that. You are responsible for getting these people in and out of office. So ultimately, the responsibility lies back with us. So we have to make sure that we mobilize every time there's election. We show up educated, and we make sure that our voices are heard.